to Swayam MOOC course NGOs and Sustainable Development, Unit 2, Module 12, Community Development Program. Learning objectives. By the end of this module, you will be able to understand what is community development, learn the role of NGOs in community development, discern how various community development schemes and projects are successful because of the involvement of NGOs. Now let us see what is community development. The concept of community development programs focuses on interventions for community development that are both people-centered and people-led and aim to improve the living circumstances of the communities. In other words, community development aims to provide individuals and groups with the knowledge and abilities necessary to make a difference in their local community. Now, what is community development? C stands for community and D stands for development. Community is people who are confined for a particular region or communities of interest are referred to as communities. Now let us see what is development. Development as a concept would imply that there has been improvement or advancement that is secured because of freedom, dignity, self-reliance and self-growth. This would involve twin concepts of social as well as economic development. Community development is a cooperative facilitating process used by individuals or communities or in turn institutions or academic stakeholders with the aim of enhancing the capacity to improve the quality of life within the community. The process of creating a vibrant, long-lasting community built on social factors and respect for one another is what we call as community development. The United Nations defines community development as a process where community members come together to take collective action and generate solutions to the common problems that are being faced by the community. It is a broad concept practiced by civil leaders, activists, social conscious citizens, and professionals to improve the community needs for building a stronger and more resilient community. Now let us see what International Association defines community development. So as per the IA's definition, it defines it as a practice-based profession and an academic discipline that promotes participative democracy, sustainable development, rights, economic opportunity, equality, and social justice through the organization, education, and empowerment of people within their communities, whether these be of locality or local conditions or identity of interest, or it could be in urban or rural settings. Community development overall seeks to empower individuals and the community with the skills required to cause a change for the upliftment of that society or that community. In India, community development was initiated by Government of India through the Community Development Program, which is known as the CDP, in 1952. The focus of CDP was on rural communities, but professionally trained social workers concentrated their practice more in the urban areas rather than the rural areas. However, India lives in the rural areas. So, agriculture, animal husbandry, irrigation, collaboration, public health, education, name it, village industries, etc., are all located more in the rural areas, and hence CDP has to be taken to the rural areas. The main objective of community development program is to improve the standard of living of the village people. They have been provided with various employment opportunities, facilities to set up industries and the training to improve their agriculture production, finally their social upliftment. The three types of communities we can broadly classify in CDPR. We can classify them as rural, as urban and semi-urban, which is in between the rural and the urban. Now, what are the elements? The elements will include 5 capitals of community, which are the physical, financial, human, social, and environmental elements as far as CDP is concerned. It is through the participation in their community that people rethink about the problems and they try to expand the contacts that they can have, and they can build networks, and finally this will help them to get the social capital. Now, what are the dimensions of the CDP? The three C's. Community development programs need to be understood with dimensions of their context, their creation, and their culmination. Now, the context factors in CDP will relate to the problems, the concerns of that community. In other words, the context from which it is evolving, the background, the strength, the weakness of that community. Now, if you're going to talk about the creation refers to the unique programs that can address the community, the challenges the community is facing, the concerns it has, and how to create a useful community by adopting certain procedures, certain tactics. Now, the third C is the culmination. Culmination would relate to how the program is going to get accomplished. In other words, the climax of the project, how the objectives are going to be achieved, the ability of the community to steerhead it and to get the project in place for their community is the culmination. The CD process, the community development process, we can classify it into 6 steps. They are step number one is community involvement. It is very essential. The entire community needs to be involved in developing the community projects. The second step is after the involvement, the entire community has to come together for community planning. So, planning what has to be done, how the project has to be initiated and accomplished becomes the second step of community development process. Just the involvement or the initiation is not sufficient. Proper planning is very essential for any project to be successful. So, after a comprehensive plan has been done, the third step is strategic planning. Strategic planning is how do I plan from the top level. So, how the project can be done starting from the strategic point or the top of the management, how it can be initiated, what are the processes to be understood, the donors to be identified comes under the strategic planning. The fourth step in community development process is the project planning. So, project planning we can call it as the micro level planning. So, how do I get this project in place? By involving the skills of the community, the people of that community. Uh, just the money alone is not sufficient in many of the instances. Until the people are involved, the project will not become successful. So, micro level planning is required to ensure the project is successful. So, the fourth step is the project planning, where we need to understand what is the time required at each phase of the project and how to get various people, various laborers, various skills at the right opportune time so that the project is successful. So, the fourth step is the project planning. In other words, the micro level planning. The fifth step of the community development process is the grant application. So, after we have identified what is it we want, how is it we are going to take it forward, we need to prepare the proposal to identify the donors for this project. So, we need to identify who will sponsor the project, whether it is going to be the government sponsor or is it going to be the organization which is going to sponsor this project for the community. How do we get the sponsorship, whether it is going to be the CSR funding or sometimes the community itself will come forward to sponsor the project. So, we need to find out in the fifth stage, how do I prepare the project grant application. And the last stage in the community development process is the project implementation and completion. So, after we have planned and we have identified the donor, we start implementing the project. So, if the planning is proper and if the money has come in, I think 80% of our problem is over. So, we need to implement as per the plan. We need to identify whether our project is scheduled and it is happening as we have scheduled and planned. So, that is the sixth stage. So, project implementation and completion of the project. The CDP, which is Community Development Program, has been divided into three different phases. We call that as the National Extension Phase. The approach for delivering the services based on the pattern of typical rural development and extending it to the chosen area at a lower cost for the government is defined as the national extension phase. Intensive community development project phase. In this phase, the selected blocks are subjected to intense development. With this will cost higher for the government. And post intensive development phase. In this post intensive development phase, it is assumed that the process foundation for self perpetuation was established during the earlier phases, together with the decrease in the government's cost. So the first one, where it is community development national extension phase, the cost is very low for the government, whereas if it is the second phase, it is very extensive, very high for the government. After the post intensive development phase, the cost is not that very high. It is only the maintenance of the project for the government. So, what are the objectives of community development? Now, when we look at the objectives, the major objectives we are talking about, it is for creating an equitable conditions and outcomes for good health and well-being for people who are living in the community. That is the most important objective. Everybody gets equal benefits, equal outcome, and they all live in an equitable condition. The second objective of any community development program is improving the health and prosperity of the people living in the community, because after equitable conditions are given, the next thing we need to look at, people are living in a healthy atmosphere and they are eating healthy. So providing good health and prosperity is the second objective of community development programs. The third objective is fostering a sustainable community initiative. What do we mean by sustainable community initiative? Is just providing a solution is not sufficient. When we provide a solution, we should ensure that this solution can run on itself and the community is able to embrace this initiative and they are able to take it forward on their own. So then we call it as providing or giving them a sustainable development scheme. The fourth objective is cultivating a sustainable self sufficiency for the people. It is not always that people will handhold. Yes, we need to handhold, but within the community, the people should come forward to embrace, to adopt a self sufficiency approach. So, the objective of the community development program is also to cultivate a sense of sustainable self sufficiency among the people in the community. And the fifth objective is to increase the personal worth, dignity, and value of the people. So people should feel that they have the pride of living in that community. They value their role, their citizenship in that community. Only then they can come forward and can contribute for the upliftment of that community, and in turn, it will be the upliftment of the society. The fifth objective of any community development program is to build an awareness and resolve any issues that could be present in the community. So these are the six major objectives of any community development programs that is carried out. Now, when we look at the approaches, there are several approaches to community development. The first approach is whether we can go for a community engagement. All these approaches will help us to ensure that our community development programs or projects are successful in its implementation and also after its implementation. So the first approach is community engagement. So in community engagement, it focuses on the relationships as the core of facilitating understanding and evaluation, involvement, exchange of information and opinion about a concept, issue or project, with the aim of building a social capital. Social capital is bringing every individual into that community development project and enhancing the social outcomes. Because of the involvement, because of the engagement, the social capital increases. When the social capital increases, it's just like your money capital. When the society comes together, we call that as the social capital. So when the social capital increases, the social outcome also is very good. So when we involve the society, the people in the community, in the decision making process. So all comes together in a holistic manner, and we have community engagement. So this is one approach of going ahead with a community development project. The second approach to community development is through the women's self-help group. So today we find that women's strength is very strong, and people who are at home come together and they form small groups. So people who help themselves, we call them as the women's self-help group. So community development program can also be carried to the community through the women who come together through the self-help group. The third approach is community capacity building. So in this, what we try to do is the local communities are trained, their capacity is enhanced through the training programs, so that they are able to achieve when the project is given to the community has the capacity, they have got the training, they have the mechanism by which they can carry forward the project. So the third approach by which we can do the community development project is through community capacity building. The fourth approach is we can go for large group capacity increase. When we talk about large group, of course there will be several people involved from the community. So it is a social psychology and a adult education strategy that we need to use. This is based on every individual coming together and forming a large group, and hence a large social capital gets together. And when these large group of people who are unemployed come together, then we have a large labor force through which we can take forward our community development projects. The fifth approach is through social capital formation. Through this is when we are able to tap on the social capital of communities, where people are able to give in their maybe they are not unemployed, they are engaged elsewhere, but if they are able to come together and ensure that this project, the community development project, if it is going to come to their community, it is going to enhance their quality of life. When the people understand in the community, they understand that it is very relevant for their society, they may come together. And when they come together, the small amount of hours they are going to spend for it increases the capital. It is like small hours investing is like money investing for this community development program. So the capital, the social capital increases. So when we are able to garner all the social capital, then when we use that, when we tap on that resources, again we can ensure that our community development project becomes successful. The sixth approach is through a non-violent direct action. When a group of people take action to reveal an existing problem, highlighting an alternate way, or demonstrating a possible solution to a social issue that is prevailing in a community, then we classify it as a non-violent direct action. So this is a issue that is coming up from the community. So when the issue is coming up and they are putting across that this is their requirement, that there's a water shortage or the sanitary condition is very poor, or some issues of that nature, the small children are not well educated, so issues like that, when they come out and they present, then they are classified as non-violent direct action approach. This issue is taken up, and a program or a project is given to that community. And initially this was a traditional way of community development projects which was initiated in India. The seventh approach is economic development. This concentrates more on the emerging nations, the emerging developing countries. Since they want to develop the economic conditions, they want to develop the economic conditions of the community, of the people living in certain communities, then people focusing on that community want to give in community development projects, programs for that community, so that they are able to uplift the community in terms of their economic conditions. This will in turn, because everything is interrelated, so this will in turn have not just the economic development, it will have a social development, it will have a political development, and also economic development. The finance of that community will be enhanced. The eighth approach is community development program, which is done in developing countries. So, in developing countries, we find that it is pockets of places which are urbanized. For example, the city, we find the economic situation is very good. But when we go to the rural, remote areas, very remote villages, we find that they are still living in a very deprived situation. So, community development, community economic development is very much essential in developing countries, because whatever policies, procedures are set up by the government, it has to filter down, it has to drill down, it has to go to the remote people living in remote areas. So, community economic development is an approach by which we ensure that we give social upliftment, economic upliftment to people in very remote areas. The ninth approach is sustainable development. When we take this approach of sustainable development, then what we are trying to aim is we are trying to accomplish the objectives of social, economic, and environmental protection. Because whenever we talk about sustainable development, the three pillars we have already studied are social, economic, and environment. So, if we are taking a community development program and we are taking the approach of sustainable development, we ensure that all these three pillars are strengthened in that community. The 10th approach is community driven development. So, the word driven indicates what is this approach. So, this approach is where the government pushes or drives certain initiatives, and why it drives these initiatives is because it finds that certain pockets in the community, in certain pockets, have not received what others have received. So, community driven initiatives or community driven development is something which the government would like to enforce, would like to drive home to the locality. So, when we take this route, it means that it is to focused areas that the initiatives are taken, because they do not have that development in certain domains. The 11th type of community development programs, we can take the approach of asset based community development. It is a system that aims to identify and utilize the local community's strengths and assets. For example, the locality may be in a very natural boundary. So, that asset, the community development can take that route of encashing on the natural assets like the natural habitat, and a tourism in a project may be initiated, or it can be a wildlife sanctuary if that is the asset of that community. The wildlife, the areas around that can focus on the wildlife, so that asset of that community is considered when you give a community development program. The 12th approach is community based participatory research. So, it is called as the CBPR. It is a partnership based research approach that equity involves, for example, the community members, the organizational representatives, and researchers. All of them come together and they are all in an equitable platform. And whatever community development project is given, they try to gather the data, try to find out whether the initiatives have been properly reaching the community. So they try to do research on the entire process, starting from the initiation till the implementation and after maintenance. So the entire process data is collected and research is done, and based on that decision making is done. Then we are taking the community based participatory research approach. The 13th approach is community organizing. When you are going to take a strategy of community organizing, then the community development program will ensure that the community takes over the project, understanding this conflict, the social struggle that may be present within the community. They understand that and they take over, and the community brings the collective power of the community together and they implement the project. Then we call it as the community organizing the CDP, Community Development Program. The 14th approach is participatory planning. It includes community based planning. It involves the entire community in the strategic, starting from the top level, and the implementation part also. So, the entire community takes from the strategic planning to the project planning, uh, getting grants, getting donors, the entire thing, the community takes over and it does all the planning uh, till the implementation is over. Then we call that approach as participatory planning in the community development. The 15th approach is language revitalization. Uh, why we talk about language revitalization is for India, especially the entire length and breadth of India, we have several languages, and our strength, we say, is unity in diversity. So this approach emphasizes using a language in a way that meets the needs of the community. This could entail producing literature, movies, or other forms of media using language. So these activities support the preservation of a, a, a small, a tiny linguistic community's language and culture. So when we take this approach, we are giving more importance to the language, the heritage, the culture of the community, and programs are initiated. Community development programs are initiated to focus on the that particular community's dialect, the culture, etc. So we have seen the various approaches we can take for community development program in planning, in implementation. Now let us see what are the values that we derive from taking this community development programs. So the types of values we derive is social justice. People can assert their human rights, meet their needs, and exercise greater control over the decisions that affect their life. The second value, because of this community development program, when it is implemented in various communities, are participation. We facilitate democratic participation by individuals in matters that directly impact their lives based on full citizenship, autonomy, and shared authority, expertise, knowledge, and experience. The third value when we go for community development programs is equality. So everybody is going to be treated equal and everybody has got a right to challenge whether this project is useful or not useful. And of course the social behavior also is out of the picture. The entire community comes together irrespective of the social strata. The fourth value that we get is learning. When the community goes through this community development programs, there is a lot of learning. They understand their abilities, they understand their strengths, and they are able to grow as the project gets implemented. And as the project gets completed, they have the learning that what is it they lack and what is the next project they should aim for. The fifth value is cooperation. Invariably, when any community development project is initiated in a community, everybody have to come together to make it successful. So everybody have to work together, and hence, when people come together, when they work for a project, automatically there has to be cooperation. So community development workers are committed to defend against the repressive and discriminatory practices that exist sometimes within the organization, institution, also in the communities. They create environmental protection practices and policies because we need to be sustainable. They promote community and organization networking and relationships. They make sure that everyone in the society has access and a choice of various options that is thrown open to them. They are able to influence what projects they would like to have, what is the type of policies they want for their community, and they are able to prioritize the issues that they are facing, and they are able to put forward what is their most important challenge which need to be addressed. and most important, end of the day, they are able to give a long lasting, a sustainable social transformation within their community. Now, where is the role of NGOs in this? When we come to the role of NGOs, we find that community development programs, we are talking about how we are going to uplift the community. But for uplifting the community, we need a person to handhold them and to take them through this process. That is where the NGOs come in. The NGOs are people who try to give whatever is required for the community in terms of training, in terms of learning, in terms of making them understand where they are facing the challenges, and handhold them and represent them to the higher bodies like the government, the organizations, the sponsors, and ensure that the community development projects are successful. So NGOs are very important part in any community development project. So NGOs help communities by increasing their capacities, which include the ability, the skill, the knowledge to mobilize the resources and help them organize and evaluate their community initiatives. Most important, they're able to help the communities understand what will be the future challenges that they may be facing, and hence the community takes on the role to address these issues and challenges for the community. Let us take some case studies and understand how NGOs have helped in community development. Uh, One such case is the Janmitran Kalyan Samiti. The Janmitran Kalyan Samiti, which means Friends of the People in its literal translation, was founded in 2002 with the intention of collaborating with the government and the community based organization to work for community development. In collaboration with NABARD, they have successfully established more than 925 orchards through the Wadi Development Program, giving the tribal people a means of subsistence and meeting other essential necessities. The project's most surprising success is that farmers can now cultivate more crops on fertile land that was before barren, and thus help providing a better quality of life for that community. Roughly 10 years ago, the initiative helped in supporting people as well as protecting the environment. Another project of the NGO is the Watershed Program, which intends to conduct soil and water conservation efforts in designated NGO owned regions to ensure the community grows as a whole in a holistic manner. The NGOs also endeavor to strengthen the skills of that community, train the natives and the tribal members of that community so that they are happy, they are having a better quality of life. Now let us take the second case, which is the Gram Chatna Kendra. The Gram Chatna Kendra had taken on the duty of offering answers to the water difficulties in the light of repeated harms that that brought in droughts in Rajasthan. So many tanks and pools have been constructed for rainwater harvesting to relieve water scarcity in certain areas of Rajasthan, mostly in the rural districts. This organization provides drinking water round the year. Further, it also educates the rural residents on how they have to tackle the current issues and also provides them with answers. They have built public restrooms. Several locations have been identified to provide sanitations and restroom facilities, and all this has a holistic effect on the environment. Their livelihood promotion project intends to inform and assist the local farmers in carrying out a resource efficient consumption, sustainable water use for irrigation, and use of the cutting edge technologies for farming. So they try to bring in a holistic uh, development. They are trying to take the technology, new technologies to the farmers. They are trying to educate the farmers so that there is a sustainable development in that area. The community development programs took its cues from earlier rural development initiatives that were undertaken during the 1920s, as well as from the foreign community development program objectives initiatives that was carried out in Great Britain and United States. The learning from there was copied, and it was uh, repeated in the uh, community development projects in India, and it was implemented successfully. During October 1952, 55 development blocks became the focus for the first significant rural development programs. So, rural communities fully developed, made use of these NGOs so that they were able to develop their quality of life. This improved the residents' quality of life by accelerating the food availability that was available for them because of efficiency in how they did their agriculture. Other recent programs of community development included the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, Rajiv Gandhi Gramin Vidya Ketran Yojana, Rashtriya Krishya Vikas Yojana, Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, National Rural Livelihood Mission, Antyodaya Anna Yojana, Deen Dayal Upadaya Gram Jyoti Yojana. Further, there are other community development programs, namely the Indra Awas Yojana, Janani Suraksha Yojana, National Literacy Mission, and the Midday Meal Scheme. So, these are several community development programs which were initiated in India for the development of the rural community. The tribal communities were also focused through the special multipurpose tribal development projects, which we call it as the MTDPs, which was again started during 1954. The tribal communities were also focused, and programs were taken, community development programs were taken to the tribal regions for their upliftment. Due to the large number of schemes, the MDTPs were unable to serve the interests to a large extent, and several NGOs stepped in so that they were able to take it successfully to the remote areas in India. The tribal development blocks were later created, where there was a 66% of higher concentration of tribal people in the community development blocks. The tribal subplan strategy, which is known as the TSP, which was developed for the quick socio-economic advancement of the tribal people, is still in place today with the following goals. The overall socio-economic development of the tribal people, lifting them out of poverty, was a goal. Defense of tribal people against many types of exploitation by the other urban areas were a goal of the TSP. Numerous NGOs led programs for the tribal community development have focused on the challenges they are facing in the tribal areas. Particularly, the NGOs tried to increase their capacity building exercises, and their focus was more on sustainable development, self sufficiency, sustainable development. So, NGOs had a very great role in making the community development programs a success. One of the most successful one is the Andhra Pradesh Tribal Development Project, which is APTDP. It was established using local level institutions, including self-help groups, cluster level associations of the self-help groups, user groups, village development committees. So all these people, starting from the bottom layer, they came together as clusters, and the project was for education, for health, improving their irrigation, bringing in conservation, protecting the environment, and finally it is for sustainable development. So this project was found to be very successful, and it was because of the synergy of everybody, not just the community but the NGOs, the government. The synergy helped in making this project very successful. The communities chose the leaders and members to serve as their representatives, and typically this selection required the consent of the traditional council of elders. As a result, there was a relationship between the younger and the older generation, and it was very informal, and hence the project was found to be very successful. So we know community development projects are very important to the rural and to the tribal area. In recent times, we find that there are community development projects in the urban area also, because there are pockets of people in the urban area who are in need of the community development programs. So, in other words, this is a program for reducing the poverty that aims to bring under the control of the government all the poor people who are marginalized and who needs to be uplifted. Only then there will be a social, economic, political upliftment of the society, the community, and the nation. So, now let us see some questions and answers in relation to this module. What is the purpose of community development? Community development aims to improve the living standards of the people. It enhances and promotes participatory democracy, sustainable development, the rights, the economic conditions, equality, and social justice in a community through organizing and capacity building of the people. What are the seven theories of community development? The seven theories are organization, power relationship, shared meanings, relationship building, choice making, conflict, and integration of paradoxes. Now, let us see the third question. What are the values and principles of community development? Community development is a holistic approach, and it is grounded in the principles of empowerment, human rights, inclusion, social justice, self determination, and collective action. So, to summarize, in this module, we have understood what is community development, the important role of NGOs in community development, discerned how various community development schemes and projects have been successful because of the involvement of NGOs. Thank you.